Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 11th, 2021, recorded around 2:03 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including the potential for a tropical depression or storm to be forming in the Gulf of Mexico here over the next 5 days. So let's go ahead and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we do notice that we do have a couple of areas of interest over the next couple of days. We'll talk about the Gulf of Mexico area here in a second, but what we first notice is that we have a very healthy tropical wave coming off of Africa right now, and it does have some consolidated areas of vorticity with it. You can kind of see that there is an area of mid-level vorticity that is associated with this area of showers and thunderstorms. Now, not really likely to see much development as, again, we have a large plume of big Saharan air that is stretching all the way across the main development region. And again, water temperatures for this time of the year are running a little bit below the long-term average. But by and large, again, just water temperatures and the climatological background just really isn't that favored right now for tropical cyclone genesis out here across the main development region. But then we turn our attention towards the Gulf of Mexico and Bay of Campeche over the next several days. This area right in through here. And we do have an area to watch. This is actually Invest Area 93E over here in the Eastern Pacific Basin, which we'll talk about here in a second. And this could end up crossing over and having development chances in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, again, this evolution is very complex, so we're going to go ahead and try to get talking about it here in just a second. Now, looking at the overall background favorability here, this is looking at the actual sea surface temperatures for the Gulf of Mexico and the southern Bay of Campeche. What we do notice is that over the last several days, we've had a lot of the cooler waters be eroded out here near the shelf waters. And we've had a lot of that cooler water kind of mixed in, and now we have a lot of warm water that's just kind of sitting there. These water temperatures now are sitting at basically 26 or higher. Really, most of the areas actually roughly about 27.5 degrees Celsius and higher. You can kind of see even near the shelf waters here, 28 degrees Celsius waters, 27 right up here near the Florida panhandle. But again, by and large, there's some fairly sufficient water temperatures across this region. And even looking down here where development chances are likely or are favored for right now, we should say, water temperatures are running at about 29 to 30 Celsius. And because of that, we have some fairly high confidence that water temperatures would not be a problem. Now, if we look here at a different product, this is the upper ocean heat content map updated as of this morning. And again, for reference, these lighter blue colors onward towards the right of the scale here, this is basically a sufficient upper ocean heat content for tropical cyclones to work with. And basically, tropical cyclones upwell cooler water as they move across the ocean. But having high upper ocean heat content, which is what these warmer colors represent, it basically would only upwell warmer and warmer water. So it doesn't upwell that cool water and subsequently then doesn't choke it off. So anywhere within these lighter blues onwards towards the right of the scale, pretty decent upper ocean heat content, especially once you start getting into the oranges and the reds. And what we'll notice is out here in the Bay of Campeche region, this area right in through here, we do have some fairly decent upper ocean heat content. And there is some near the shelf waters, although it just doesn't populate on this particular map. But there is some fairly high upper ocean heat content, and there is sufficient water temperatures in this region, sitting at 29 Celsius, 28 to 29 Celsius, for there to be something to kind of work with in this environment. And especially notice out here across the central Gulf here, central and eastern Gulf of Mexico, we have this warm tongue, this kind of warm eddy, this loop current that has kind of just been sitting there. So it's been populating some fairly high upper ocean heat content values over the last couple of weeks. And because of that, this is certainly kind of another area that we'll have to watch maybe potentially towards the latter half of the hurricane season. Who knows? But this area right in through here is kind of the most favored for this time right now. And again, upper ocean heat content values are warm enough to support kind of a moderate tropical storm or maybe even a low-end hurricane. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the water temperatures certainly do support that. Now, looking out here at the Eastern Pacific Basin real quickly, because this has implications on what's going on here in the Atlantic, but this is the 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center for the Eastern Pacific. We noticed that Invest Area 92E over here has a 50% chance, and so does Invest Area 93L, or 93E, sorry. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. So, These two areas both have a 50% chance of developing over the next 5 days. And I'm not really interested in this system because it's no land concern. I'm really focused on this system right here because of how close in proximity it is to land and the land concerns it will bring. We'll talk about that here in a moment. And in the Atlantic Basin and the Gulf of Mexico, we do have the National Hurricane Center highlighting this area down here in the Bay of Campeche with a 20% chance of development over the next 5 days. And again, this will be something to watch here. Now, again, it's too early to determine what, if any, impacts is going to occur for the Central Gulf of Mexico. However, it will be something that we will have to watch. Again, really anywhere from this point at the Yucatan Peninsula all the way through Florida, it's hurricane season. You should be monitoring anyway. So this is just kind of one thing that you're going to have to kind of keep in mind. Anywhere along the Gulf of Mexico, including coastal Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula, does have to monitor, as it is hurricane season. You should be monitoring anyway. Now, kind of focusing a little bit on the structure of Invest Area 93E, we can tell that it's not a very well-organized system. Again, showers and thunderstorms, yes, they have become a little bit more concentrated, but you can notice that this is a very large area of spin in the atmosphere. It's not a very consolidated bit of vorticity. Now, we do notice that this is probably a closed low-level circulation, as we can tell that the lower-level cloud features are streaming in and wrapping around, suggesting that this probably is a closed surface cyclone at this point, which would mean that if we did get any areas of concentrated shower and thunderstorm activity to kind of consolidate around this low, then at that point it would probably be designated as a tropical depression or storm. Currently, we just don't have that. You notice that we actually have a large plume of showers and thunderstorms that are impacting coastal Mexico here. And for this reason, again, it's a very big concern. If we pull out to the water vapor loop here, we can kind of tell that on a much broader scale, we actually have a fairly decent area of clouds and just general thunderstorm activity over kind of coastal Mexico, this whole area. This is Central America right here, really, and then this is Mexico. Now, again, this is a problem because this is going to generate a lot of flooding concerns over the next several days. And we notice that right now in the Gulf of Mexico, there's not really anything. We just have too strong a shear, which we'll show here in a moment. But we do also notice that, again, there is a fairly moist environment in this area. They're fairly moist. We don't have a lot of this dry air cutting down across like this. And we don't have that here. We have a lot of moist air generally within this environment. And for that reason, moisture is not really a problem. But what the problem is that we have some problems here with the fact that we still have some pretty strong upper level winds that are kind of cutting across this area. And because of that, the shear has not really allowed for thunderstorm activity to kind of consolidate. And if we kind of go back here to the visible high res, we can kind of see that that's kind of the case where these thunderstorms are being sheared off towards kind of the east-northeast here. These thunderstorm clusters that develop, they get sheared off, and we can kind of see some of the lower-level cloud fragments that are getting sheared away. So there's that kind of working into everything. Now, again, if we do get 6 to 12 hours of consolidated thunderstorm activity, this becomes a tropical depression or a storm. So just because it has a 50% odd, 50% odds right now, it's 50-50. And it can go way up or it can go way down depending on how the environment responds within a 6 to 12 hour period. So these things are very intricate. It's a very intricate process. So we'll just have to monitor that. Now, on the 850 millibar vorticity map, this is the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. And for reference here, these reds and whites, that's your higher cyclonic spin at that 5,000 foot level. And what we notice is that we do have a pretty big area of vorticity that is stretched out along this area. This is kind of the intertropical convergence zone stretching from the Atlantic basin. It kind of continues on stretching from the Atlantic all the way through the Eastern Pacific and then the Central Pacific. It's kind of right along that date line there, right? And because of that, again, we can kind of see now to the north, we have this consolidated area of vorticity that has developed within this larger environment, within this larger monsoonal trough. And because of that, this is Invest Area 93E right there. And we can see that, yes, there is some fairly decent bundling of the energy down here. It does have a little bit of a round circulation to it. But we can also see that it is still kind of attached, by and large, to this larger monsoonal trough and gyre than it is kind of just on its own with standalone vorticity. And because of that, we don't really see something like this where it's kind of bundled up here in the northern latitudes. Again, that's, a northern latitude cyclone, but we don't really see that here. It is trying to bundle itself, but it's still attached to this larger monsoonal trough and gyre that is kind of set up across that area. Now, if you look here at the GFS forecast, this is the 12Z run valid for 18Z or 2 p.m. this afternoon. And again, what we're kind of looking at here is this area right out here. And we kind of notice that. Now, we'll kind of jump down here to the Western Atlantic view here real quickly so we can kind of get a zoomed in look. But we notice that, yes, there is this area of cyclonic vorticity in the atmosphere here. We can kind of see that we do still have this weak Central American gyre that's kind of setting up across this area. A very weak gyre at the most. It's not as strong as I thought it would be. But there is still a weak monsoon gyre in there, in monsoon trough, and embedded within that is our area of smaller concentrated vorticity within this larger monsoon trough and gyre. Eventually, though, you can kind of see within 42 hours, there's not really much of this left. There is a little, resemblance of that at the 5,000 foot level, but it's not really even a closed isobar. We don't have any closed isobars at this time. Now, eventually what happens, this is going out by 6Z or 2 a.m. Tuesday, this larger area of vorticity has now moved into the southern Bay of Campeche. Now, a lot of this is still entangled over Mexico at this point. A lot of it is still entangled over Mexico. And there's also kind of additional little ripples and waves that are kind of coming across here that might interact with this larger area of lower than normal pressures and just this larger cyclonic vorticity area. And eventually on the GFS, we kind of get an area to kind of pivot around, and this actually kind of develops from an area of vorticity over Cuba and slingshots it kind of around this larger gyre, and then eventually this whole gyre begins to move northward on Friday, really beginning really from Wednesday going into Thursday. This larger gyre moves rapidly northward, and we get a rapidly moving, messy, sloppy system that is rapidly advecting northward. And that's one thing that's going to be very kind of keen on is like, does this happen, or is this really just a model fluke? Now, on the relative humidity map, what we're looking at here is about the mid-levels in the atmosphere, about the 700 to 400 millibar in the atmosphere. And again, we can kind of see these little ripples. You got these little tropical waves that are kind of coming across here within this broader disturbance, and eventually the two kind of become mingled. And on this particular run, the GFS develops a low-end tropical depression or storm somewhere in the central and northern Gulf of Mexico on Friday. Now, the model solutions, again, have started to come into more of agreement that there will be something within this area over the next 5 days. And that's why, again, the Hurricane Center has decided to kind of put this area under, the potential for development within the next, 5 days. What we do notice, though, is that, again, the structure, again, this would be a very east-weighted system. You can see a lot of this energy is concentrated on the east side. More of a subtropical look than anything. You've got dry air entrained within the center and the western side of the circulation, dry air coming off the continental United States, and a lot of moist air being pumped from the eastern Pacific through the Gulf of Mexico and the southeast United States. Now, whether, again, this happens or not, it's just too early. And again, it's too early to kind of nail down specifics. But if you are from anywhere, really, from the Yucatan Peninsula, coastal Mexico, through Texas and Florida, and everywhere in between, yes, you do need to monitor the progress of this system. It's hurricane season anyway. It's June 11th. This is the, kind of the start of the hurricane season. So, yeah, you do need to be monitoring anyway. And again, you should be staying on top of everything. So this is one particular model run. Again, the last model run, this is the 6Z run. Again, very sloppy system. The 0Z run had a little bit more of an organized system. The 18Z run out of yesterday didn't really have a system at this time. And the 12Z run yesterday had a very weak system. And 6Z run yesterday, same thing. So all of these model runs have shown, yes, there's an area of low pressure, but how well established does it get? I don't know that answer, nor does anybody else. So if you hear that, oh, major hurricane or hurricane in the Gulf or whatever, potential major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, it's just not going to happen. I'm going to say that right now. It's June 11th. This is not September. This is not August. Again, it's just important to kind of understand that right now climatology favors this area for development, and you shouldn't be surprised, but not probably likely going to see anything of a strong hurricane or anything to that magnitude. Now, do I know that answer for sure? No, but climatology suggests that it would be a weak, disorganized system, whatever comes out of the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll just kind of put it that way for now. Now, the GFS, the GFS ensembles here, this is the MSLP anomalies here, the mean sea level pressure anomalies. And again, we'll kind of run this forward with time. What we notice is that we could be dealing with more than one system. First of all, again, we could see a system develop here off the United States East Coast. And I'm not really concerned about that for the main fact that, again, any land impacts would be very limited more than likely, and this would probably get sent away towards the north with the pressure patterns. Maybe recurving, but again, that's kind of really far out in time, and I'm not really into speculating about that. But what we do notice is that after really about day 5, pressure anomalies do become increasingly lower than average across the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche. And that is the time where development chances could occur. And real quickly, if we look here at the average ensemble pressures here, and if we kind of zoom in on the Gulf of Mexico region and the Western Atlantic as a whole, what we'll notice is that, yeah, we do have an area of lower than normal anomalies setting up by Friday. And this, again, could range from, a strong tropical storm to a weak, disorganized tropical depression or just a big rainmaker for somewhere in the central Gulf of Mexico. Now, whatever does happen, there will probably be a system that ends up moving northward over the next several days, kind of northwestward or northward, and it just kind of really depends. But I do suspect that there will be something, but what that something is, I don't really know. Now, one thing that's kind of going against having a major system develop is the fact that there's pretty strong upper level winds that will be kind of cutting across this area. You've got a lot right now of southwesterly shear that will kind of be pushing on any system that ends up developing. And given that fact, again, we notice that shear in the Bay of Campeche starts to decrease really significantly by about Saturday, but that's past timing already. So the best window of opportunity is probably going to be when development chances have already passed, have already come and gone. So I'm not really worried about seeing any significant system. The European model, this is the 12Z run. Again, the Euro does develop a little bit of a system down there. This is the latest 12Z Euro, so I haven't even looked at that. But the 12Z Euro, curiously enough, does have an area of vorticity here by Tuesday. So we could be talking really within the next, 96 hours by early next week. By early to mid next week, we could be dealing with a system down there in the Bay of Campeche. Could it be Tropical Storm Bill? Who knows at this point? Now, if we go back to the 0Z Euro, because this isn't quite finished yet, if we pop back on the 0Z Euro, again, it's much of the similar solution. And then a weak, disorganized mess continues to move northward across into the central or western Gulf of Mexico. But again, it's too early to determine who gets hit or how strong a system may be or whatever. Now, the European ensembles, again, this is the 0Z European ensembles. So the 0Z run from 8 p.m. last night had, again, a very weak system developing down here. And then eventually a trough comes in and digs it northward. And again, yes, there is some stronger models, 976, but that's kind of an outlier. A lot of weaker systems, in the low 1,000 millibar range to high 990s, maybe some low 990s. Not really seeing a signal, though, for intense hurricane. Nothing that really screams intense hurricane in the Gulf at this point. So again, anywhere right now from coastal Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, through Texas to Florida, and everywhere in between needs to be monitoring the progress of this system, as there will probably be something that comes out of there. But what and how strong and where it goes is too early to determine at this particular time. All right. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.